I'd like to call the West Baton Rouge Parish Fire Protection District Number 1 Board of Commissioners special meeting to order. Machines are open for a roll call. Item number 3, resolutions. A resolution changing the fire chief position from full-time to part-time. President Berthelot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, council members. Okay, it's really what we're asking for is to allow us for a fire chief is a part-time position. We went through the proper protocol to do this. We basically went to the Civil Service and the Office of State Examiners, went through them, and we had to answer a questionnaire. We had about 500 questions that we filled out so they could build a test for West Baton Rouge. When you give a fire chief's exam, you know, like you can't take one anywhere else in the state. You got to take the one that they build specifically for your parish. And so we had that done. Kenny left on August, the late part around August 26th. And so after we built that thing, they give us 60 days to hire a chief, you know, to replace him. And so we called for the test. We had about 10 applicants. We had about 7 of them that really didn't fill out the paperwork correctly, so we had to, you know, pretty much eliminate those. We had one guy who wanted to take tests only for practice. He didn't want the job. And so so that's what we did. And so we took those 2 guys. I interviewed them, and then, you know, one of them was, you know, had some better qualities, leadership qualities and stuff that I thought. Offered him the job, he accepted the job. A week later, he turns it down. So, you know, I'm trying to weigh in my options. So I talked to Butch Browning. Butch is he's supposed to be coming. I didn't see him yet, but he was gonna come and help me. And so we started talking about, you know, he said, you know, you could get a part-time chief that you could get whoever you want, bring them in. They can't work but 35 hours a week. That's 1 hour a day less than the chief was working. You know, instead of 40 hours, it's 35 hours. And it won't be civil service, and he would be under your direction. And so I had a guy that I had hired that I think can do this job. In fact, I know he can do this job on a part-time basis, and kind of put us back on the tracks and get this train rolling again, because we have a lot of things that needs to be done in our you know, in our fire department that, you know, it's not getting done, and it's really no one to blame except maybe me. But anybody we hire, you know, on the civil service side, they got a 12-month working test period, which means that, you know, we could evaluate them. If they're not getting the job done you know, we could probably, you know, get someone else at that time. But we went through all the stuff, and then, you know, when we got to that point, you know, in our 60-day window extension, after we looked at the applicants and didn't do it, the window is closing pretty fast. In fact, I'm over the 60 days, but I have to go back to the Civil Service Board, request either to, actually, if you pass this resolution, I'll set a Civil Service Board meeting up, and it'll go back to them, and they'll set a meeting up, and they'll have a public hearing with the resolution from the council to abolish the full-time chief's position. So we will delete all of the qualifications that's in our manual, that the qualifications of the chief, and then if we decide to come back later and get a full-time chief, then we'll rewrite or put, you know, some qualifications back into the budget, and then we'll kind of go from there. I could tell you a lot more about a lot of different things, but, you know, basically, I have a good guy that, you know, that I hired early this year, and he's the guy who's part-time working for parish, and I would like him to be our part-time chief, which is a position that we normally don't have to advertise in the parish. We never advertise for part-time. And so this is me, Tim Crockett, and I'll be glad to let him come up here and answer any questions if you got any, or, you know, if you want to pass on this thing without discussion, or tell me what else you need.
Any questions to the parish president? Mr. Klein, Peter?
Mr. Berthelot, is there a rep from the civil service here?
Sir?
Is there a representative from the civil service
No.
board here? Okay. How
We-
long would this part-time position be?
Well, you know, when I was speaking to Chairman Lane, you know, he asked me if I would put a 12-month window on this thing, and I told him I would. I said we'd put it at a go. I think he needs 12 months to see if it works. And I think once you get to meet Tim and understand where he's coming from and his passion he has for his job, you know, and maybe by then, you know, he's working, he's almost got enough hours to graduate from college and he's going back, he can work that, I guess, online, I guess, and he can try to get his degree where he could qualify to, you know, to put his hat in for the civil service position. But, you know, Tim and I talked to some things that we're not getting done. Tim is the guy who could build a bridge between our full-time firemen and our volunteers. You know, I think we got a gap there that the past chief, you know, he didn't really probably make as good an effort as he could. We had some issues with other the volunteer firemen are dropping off. And so in my discussion with Butch Browning, you know, he said some of our contract workers, you know, we could actually train our volunteer firemen, and we could actually pay them as contract people. They would have to come work a shift just like a regular contract worker do to give us a bigger pool to pull contract workers. And it would also incentivize our volunteers and some things that really could make us come together in the parish, which I think we've been lacking for some time.
Couple more questions.
Hang on a minute. Your mic is muted, yeah.
Press your button.
Press it again so you can speak. There you go.
Was the applicants, like, who wrote the actual qualifications for this job? Was it us, or does it come from the civil service board? Is it statewide, across the board?
This is something that was done in conjunction with the Office of State Examiners. Our civil service people, civil service board was up there. And, you know, I was sitting in on it. We had many of the firemen, the full-time firemen were in there making those qualifications, you know.
I guess what I'm asking is there any tweaking that we can do to it? Because if we ran into this problem with not having enough applicants now, what's gonna change 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, or a year from now?
Well, if you vote on this resolution tonight, there will be no more qualification for a full-time chief. Those will be deleted. You will not have those. And to come back and hire a chief, full-time chief in a year, we would probably have to rewrite those qualifications and put them back into the ordinance. And at that time, I was warned early by the Office of State Examiner's Office, the OSE, that, you know, like some of these things they writing that you're gonna limit the pool of people that's gonna be able to apply for this job. And I'll be honest, I didn't know enough about some of these things that was in there to know if that was that hard or not in some of the years that they required service for so many years and some of the things. Because you had three different, I would call them the R's. You know, you could have a college degree and so many years of service, or you could have a high school education and you got a bunch of requirements under that. And then you had the one with someone who had a GED, and they had more requirements under those. And so, you know, to somebody who's not a fireman, and we look at those things, it goes, I ask questions during the meetings, everybody answered, you know, and it looked good. You know, we never thought it would be a big issue to. Butch, come on, you don't mind?
So-
You know, I'm gonna throw Butch under the bus, I think everybody knows him, but Butch is the state fire marshal. He's appointed by the governor. He was appointed, he served under the general administration, now he's under Edwards, and so, I go to Butch quite often to some advice and stuff, and until Butch told me about what a part-time chief could do, and I didn't even know that was an option, to be honest with you. I may have considered this even before, when Kenny left sooner, but Butch, can you explain any of that to us, or, and he can answer a lot of these questions probably much more professional and better than I could. Thank you, Butch.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, and Honorary Counsel Butch Browning, State Fire Marshal. I guess, Pee Wee had asked me a lot of questions about how to do things. And first off, let me just tell you, what's the history of this fire department as you know it, and now this fire district is a very rich history. I think you should be very proud of what they've accomplished. They've been through a lot of changes, and they're really working together to provide the best product for all of West Baton Rouge Parish. And I've certainly watched these departments when they were individual departments from afar when I grew up in the Baton Rouge Fire Service, and and still kept in contact with them. And I think the bottom line is it's your choice to do. I mean, the state laws that govern how fire protection is run is your choice. I mean, you decide how you do things. There's a certain set of rules when you hire full-time people, not only to maintain a uniformity across the state, but also to give those employees that work in that full-time capacity the rights they need and the ability to go and do their job without any undue influence and protecting their rights as workers. So I know that much of the discussion that's been going on is you had a fire chief retire, and what are your options to do that? Well, certainly if you're going to hire a full-time person in the classified service, there's a way in which you do that. Secondly is, you can do a lot of other things, and I think in talking to the parish president, there's options out there with people who've been in this community a long time, who know a lot about the history of this fire service and know where it came from, and they can work in a part-time capacity. And what that really means is whatever you're employing them to do or whatever you're allowing them to do, they're not in the classified service. Because if they were in a full-time position where they were working 40 hours, then they would have to be in the classified service. And I think that's kind of the discussion. So you can do it either way. It's your choice to do. My suggestion, would be to find the most qualified person who you think can, number one, lead the dedicated men and women that you have in your fire department. But I think, secondly, someone who can be part of the community, build the best relationships that you can build in this community, build the confidence. One of when I made mistakes as a fire chief was when I forgot who the mayor was, and he had to remind me. And it's one of the Pee Wee's cousins, so I had to deal with Berthelot before. But he had to remind me that, hey, you're gonna be a much better fire chief if you maintain the same vision of this city and this council. And I think that's what's important. And as I travel across the state, I encourage fire departments consistently to go out and know your elected officials and know what they expect of it. Because the reality is, and I'll tell you, I mean, and it's not unique to West Baton Rouge Parish, the reality is we have a declining volunteer base. The reality is we have a declining eligible base of people who want full-time jobs in fire departments. I deal with fire chiefs all the time who say, I'm trying to hire a person, or I'm trying to hire 10 people, and I'm having trouble finding viable candidates to fill those positions. Young people are not wanting to even pursue careers in the fire service, and that's disturbing. So you have the same challenges in this parish, and you have a funding problem. This department is not funded to the ability that it needs to be funded at. So you've got to pick the perfect leadership to be able to overcome those challenges, just as you have to overcome all the other important services this government has to perform. So it's your decision to make. And nobody can tell you what you got to do. You just got to try and find the right thing. So in considering the part-time person, you find somebody who's a part of this community. You find somebody who has a reputation in this community and can lead the firefighting services here, both the career side and the volunteer side. And I hope I explained it as well as I could have. But I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have.
Mr. Crowe?
I don't know if this goes back to, Crowe got the floor.
Have you been involved with other situations where there were part-time chiefs, and if so, how did they work out?
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the map. I mean, you know, so to kind of give you an idea, there's about 670 fire departments in this state. About less than 5% of them are fully paid, where there's no volunteers at all. The vast majority are primarily volunteer. There's another 15% that has a lot more paid people but still have volunteers. But the vast majority, some, 80% of the fire departments in this state rely on volunteers. So you see a department similar to what's happened here. I mean, y'all are a little ahead of most areas of the state, but similar to what's happened here, where you've hired people and you don't have the money to hire everybody. In the perfect world, you wished you would. So you have volunteers, not necessarily part-time people. You may have volunteer fire chiefs that supervise the full-time employees. So there are a lot of models out there. Most of your parish-wide, where you're coordinating all these departments, are out of the classified service, and they're some type of a part-time, or they work for the parish government directly, not necessarily part of a fire district. So this is not uncommon, but again, it's your decision how you want to do it.
Okay, well, I just was, my interest was is if you're a direct fire chief, not just volunteer fire, a situation where there's a part-time fire chief, do you think they can handle the job? I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, and when you say part-time, I mean, is it a person that works, 30 hours a week and never be seen again? That's not what that's not what a full-time fire chief does. When you say part-time, I'm assuming you're talking about not necessarily paying a full-time salary and not necessarily working the 40 hours, but they're on call, they're subject to call, and if they're gonna be effective, they gotta be around. Just as a volunteer chief has to be around all the time, or the highest paid fire chief in America has to be around all the time.
Okay.
Mr. Kleinpeter?
Mr. Browning, I was part of Bruley Volunteer Fire Department for about 10 years, starting in the 90s, late 90s. It has changed. We don't have the volunteer force. I think there's just a different time from now. I've talked to quite a bit of people, and not sure if we can ever get that back. I don't know if this is to you or to Mr. Berthelot, but if we go to a part-time and we have a 12-month cap on this, do we plan on going to is this a civil service? Are we going to a civil service or non-civil service full-time?
What's the cap you said? Are you going to what?
He had mentioned something about a 12-month cap on this part-time position, and then, so we're doing away with the civil service chief, is what we're doing.
That's correct.
Okay.
For 12 months.
Well, I don't think you're doing away with the civil service chief. I think you're just not filling it this time. Because you'd have to, in order to say and there are a few examples across the state where the fire chief is not civil service, and there's an exception in state law that allows that.
Okay.
So the issue is that at the point that somebody works 40 hours a week, then they're entitled to the classified position. So you can't do away with the fire chief. You're just not filling it, and that's the appointed authority's purview. The board can't make you fill a position unless it becomes full time. So it may be, if the word of doing away with it would not be appropriate, because at some point you're obviously going to fill it. I mean, maybe this is a test period to find the right person to be that person. I don't know.
We've seen some rating slip, and due to the volunteer force and the trucks not rolling out like they used to, do we go up on the money? How do we fix the problem that we're facing?
I think it starts with the leadership. I mean, the rating, it's a lot about money, but the rating, and when I was a fire chief, the rating was more about management. The rating was more about every week, and sometimes every day, but every week there were certain thresholds we had to achieve. Because just the response is one piece of those points. There's a host of other points. In fact, you lose a lot. I mean, you could go to every fire but not do anything else and lose your rating.
Right.
Because the 100-point scale, the vast majority of them are the things you do every day in preparation and the things you do every day in standby. So, and I don't know the specifics of of where they were deficient other than the rating was lost, and that's very important. But I think that's even a bigger urgency to quickly put somebody in a position. And I think maybe you might have already went through a testing process and someone turned a job down, so that took time, and it's the nature of it to find qualified folks. So, I think one of the urgencies now is to put somebody in there to at least get those things right, because depending on why you lost that rating, it may require a whole 12-month period to make that up. So every day is a missed opportunity to get that thing going.
Will a part-time chief affect our rating?
It'll help your rating, yeah,
It'll help it?
yeah. Because you'll get points for that person's time, but moreover, the leadership and management, it's chief's job to manage that rating. I mean, and I'm sure there's people in the department now that are double teaming that and all that, but I mean, obviously there's an urgency to fix that retrograde issue.
So to go from a full-time chief to a part-time, it will improve the rating on the record.
If that chief is doing the things that he's supposed to be doing and leading the testing and maintenance and,
Okay.
yeah.
So it won't hurt us, is what I'm getting at.
Oh, no, if that person does his job, I hire people all the time who don't necessarily do the job I think they should do, but if I hired somebody that does the job that I'm expecting them to do, yes, sir.
Administration?
Thank you, Butch. Tim, if you don't mind, I'd like to get Tim to answer some of those things and we are concerned over the ratings. Believe me, I get calls just like you get calls, why the ratings, and we've actually, when I hired Tim to be a liaison between the fire department and the volunteers and also go into schools and do some recruiting, try to get our junior firemen going again. Talking about ratings, I gave him some copies of some of the recent ratings we had, and I wanted him to look them over those things and come up with some solutions to those things. And you almost got to look at a rating and be able to look at it and see, and we missing some, or we dropping those one ratings by very slim margins. And in fact, we can redo Irvinville again this year, and I think, what I showed Tim and some of the things that we have plans to do, that we could easily bring those ratings back. We would probably never get Irvinville back to 3, but it went to a 5, and I think we get a 4. We like 2.5 points. Just on, like Butch said, the daily paperwork and the documentation and the training, and we may be doing those things, but if we don't document them and put them down to where the guys do the ratings, you're not going to get any points for them. And so those are some things, but, I like Tim to address some of those things what he has vision for.
Let me tell you first who I am. That'll help out and kind of ease some of your mind. My name is Tim Crockett. I started in fire service, 38 years ago. Matter of fact, my first chief is somewhere in here. That's Matt LeBeau from Bruley. Okay, so we got a lot in common. But before we do this, I said 38 years. Let's go through the fire side of it, right? Been in Lobdell for now about 12, 13 years. Been the chief there. So here we are. Background. People don't know where I came from, what I do. I came from ExxonMobil. I guess I can say that now that I'm retired. I don't want to get in any trouble. But what I did there was manage. I managed people. I had, the last assignment I did was over security, Baton Rouge area, which is all the complex, all of the pipeline in this area. 95 people, $3 million budget, right? So what we had to do was maintain people, personnel, and manage. So what we need to do here is get things back on track. We're talking about a 12-month window. We're looking at what's going on here, right? Deficiency in money, funding, deficiency in people, personalities. What's going on? So what I want to do here is just bring some cohesiveness back to this parish. Run it as a combination fire department, being volunteers and paid guys. You hear all this, well, you pro this, you pro that. No, I'm pro West Baton Rouge Parish, because in the long run, we pay taxes. We are the ones that have to be responsible for our taxpayers here in the parish. So what I did, I wrote a plan, and I can get all of you a copy of the plan. Short-term plan. It's what I call a 2020 Fresh Start Plan. It talks about looking at the budgetary areas, where we slipping, where we not, and then putting some of that kind of together in in a matrix, so we can understand what's going on here. When we start talking about rating, I'm not here to bash any of the old chiefs. People do what they have to do to get it done, right? But in the rating process, you know, we all came as one. Some of that was some of the problem. But here, what we need to do is get our volunteer staff back up, start running some calls, get our training back in processes, and then when we start doing that, we get some cohesiveness back, we get some things back in line, and I think that'll help. So, first thing I want to do is let you know where I came from, let you know what I've done for the last 31 years at ExxonMobil. I was actually a manager there. So what I want to do here is help this parish manage until we can get things back on track, get things moving in the right direction. Then we can move and look for whatever we want to do. But this is the parish I stay in, this is where I live. My rating did not go up. My volunteers, we have a good volunteer department, Lobdell, District 4. We help everybody in this parish. Last year, I went to Brewley, I went to Addis, I went to Irwinville, Rose Hill. That's what we do. So I'm not saying that I'm the best chief, right? But I think I have enough abilities to bring people together, show them a little love, and get it done. That's what we want to do. So you got any questions for me? That's pretty quick. Want to kind of grasp it all, put it all in a nutshell for you. But I'm not here to kind of make or step on anybody's toes. I just want to make this a good parish and move forward. That's what we need to do. Stop worrying about politics and let's get some protection done.
Mr. Kershaw? Oh,
Some of my questions are along the lines that Caleb asked too, but I did want to recognize Mr. Hartley. I call him Young Bean, but he's on the Civil Service Board. So I just want to recognize him. And my question is, and I don't know if we need a full-time chief or part-time chief or whatever, but I know that the hills and valleys that we've been through just in the short time since we've tried to consolidate this fire system. We are to the point that we're at right now. So, am I for a full-time chief or a part-time chief? I don't know which one I'm for, but I'm willing to try almost anything.
I understand.
So, I've heard a lot about you before. You've been very upfront in the meetings that you've come to and addressed us. I do want to make a comment about the rating for the, I'm gonna call it Addison Brewley, because they were combined as one rating.
That's correct.
I used to be on the Brewley Town Council a long time ago, and then the three main factors in the rating were equipment, water, and personnel. So I don't know if that's changed. I can't see how they can get away from that very much, but our rating, they put them both together. Addis used to be a 4 and Brewley was a 3. So now Brewley has slipped to a 4, and now I'm getting some pushback from some people saying that their homeowners insurance is going up. And so I would be remiss in my duties trying to represent those people if I didn't say, I'm trying to do all I can do to look into it. So I got a copy of the fire rating, and we moved down to a 62, which is barely a 4.
That's correct.
So I don't want to move any further down and be a 5. I'm interested in going up. So I'm not a fire guy, but I'm well enough with numbers that I can tell we have some certain areas we got to address. We need to address those pretty quick.
Yeah.
So your 2020 plan, I'm very interested in getting a copy of it. I'd like to read it.
Okay.
But
And what I can tell you-
my response is, I want to make sure that we're always working, and I think you're the kind of person that's always going to make us try to be better. But we need to get better and not just talk about it.
And I like what you're saying, but there's some other points here. We got people or resources that we don't tap into. One of is the state fire marshal that came to this meeting, Mr. Butch Brown. We can tap into his resources to help us. Why we hadn't done that in the past, I don't know. I'm just a new guy here taking a different approach, and that's the approach I'm going to take. It's kind of like going to a doctor. If the GP doesn't know, he's going to send you where? To a specialist. And that's what we need to do. We need to seek people to help us to move forward in the right direction. And we got some of the best help in the state sitting right here with us.
I know he lives in West Baton Rouge.
That's correct.
So he's not that far away, so.
And we've worked real good together. Something I didn't say, I'm on the Louisiana State Firemen's Association. I'm the District 6 representative for the state of Louisiana. This is also my district. So I have the whole state and a lot of chiefs that I can also pull to help in situations like this. And I don't know why in the past we haven't. I'm the guy, if I need help, I'm gonna ask for some help. Ask my wife. Any other questions? Good, that's good.
any other questions? Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Tim.
Okay, what I plan on doing, Tim is already on board as a parish employee. He actually came to work the first week in January. And what I would like to do is, of course, this is gonna come before you in a regular council meeting, is I would like to pay for him out of our general fund. That way it give me some leeway. Right now, we are running about 70% of our budget is in labor and benefits for the fire district. And we need to, bring that back down some. We got an awful lot of overtime. We got, a good many firemen that's working a lot of overtime because we shorted on pay. We don't have a chief, so we pulled one of the deputy chiefs. And so in civil service, when you pull a person, you got to replace them and you got to step everybody up. So it costs us more money and stuff. And I think there's ways to save money. And I think we have to do something to be able to get that under control, and hopefully we can hire maybe a couple more firemen that will come in and help us. I think we just hired one, is that correct? Two? Yeah, so we got 4 coming. They got to go through the training and stuff before they actually gonna have boots on the ground, but that's what we do. So, in saying all that, unless you have any other questions, I would ask you to vote favorably on this motion, and I would really appreciate it, and then we'll continue working with you on this thing. But one thing that Butch made a comment on, but that the OEC difference from what Butch answer was about the qualifications of the chief. She said when we take a part-time chief, we actually delete the full-time chief qualifications, so, because that was my question. We just leave them there. If we ever need it again, we just go back. But she said, no, you have to redo them, and you don't have to redo them, but you have to vote back. And so we would have to come back to you to do that eventually again. So we'd have to get with the Civil Service Board and do all of that stuff. So my next step from here, with a favorable resolution, is to go to the Civil Service Board with the resolution, and then they would take the action they need to do, and then I could put Tim on board through us. Thank you for listening, and I just want to qualify one other thing. I hated to put this on you on your first meeting, your first official meeting, because it's a lot. It is a lot. But we was in that window where I thought we had somebody at the end of the year. By the time we found out, we didn't, and we had some options, and it was too late to get it on last year, and it was just, and so we really passed our 60-day window, and so we had to make a decision fairly quickly. So I appreciate for all of the attention that you put into trying to get a good understanding of what happened. And again, my door is open. If you got any questions, please come back to me. Thank you.
Any other, PB, hang tight right quick. Any other questions? One thing, if we, in this resolution, can we make sure we add it into where it's a 12-month timeframe? Okay.
I need to ask you a question. Gary
Mr.
Spillman.
Spillman.
Is this gonna be a public hearing? I mean, I think you fellas ought to, or at least listen to some of the things that some of your people have to say, and I know that you have a council meeting that's gonna be coming up, so I was just trying to figure out if you're gonna have a public hearing so these people can have an opportunity to speak, or are you going to recess and go into your council meeting and call it back out of recess after the meeting or something, or are you gonna not take action on this and have an opportunity for these other people to have a time to speak and have their concerns said? That's all I just wanted to ask.
Maybe being it just as a public meeting, can we have somebody?
Absolutely, it's your
Yeah,
meeting.
if anybody from the public has anything they want to add, just come to the mic and state your name for the record.
My name is Charles Diffie. I've been with the fire department here in Port Allen for 45 plus years. A couple of things that we came up about 6 years ago, they could decide to consolidate all the fire departments. Some of us was for it, a lot of us wasn't. The reason we wasn't is because we didn't know what direction we was headed into. 6 years into it now, we really not to where we should be. We should have been further along. Right now, we're looking to decide what we really need to go with. I think right now, we have most everyone that's in this room right now, either paid or volunteers. What we're looking to do is see if we can come up with, we don't even have any standard operating procedures. We don't have any guidelines of any kind right now, the way the fire department is run. We're looking to see if we can do all this to make things better. We don't want to go to, we feel that this parish cannot support a full-time fire department with no volunteers. And we don't really want to see the parish suffer in any way that we don't have something to back up our community. What we're looking for is someone to stand up, to take hold and see if we can't work with them. In the past couple of years, it's been a little rough. We're willing now to see what we can do to make things better. And right now, I think the best thing that we should do is go with a full-time, with a part-time fire chief, and then we come back and monitor it more, and then that way we can see if we can help him or which direction we need to go. We also may need to look at another, when we decide to bring in a full-time fire chief or during the interviews, maybe we could set up a committee to set up how we would want the chief that we're really looking for. Can he work with paid people? Can he work with volunteers? That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Mr. Manola?
Just a couple of quick things, and I appreciate him talking about the SOPs and SOGs, because one of the things when we talked about looking at the part-time chief, that is one of the tasks, along with the ratings that you mentioned earlier, is to look at our SOPs and SOGs and things they can do in the fire department to help get these things. So that'd be one of the things that the part-time position is tasked to do. Second thing, and kind of going along with Pee Wee, parish president said earlier, and the reason we're talking about doing away with the full-time chief is because under civil service, you can't leave a position vacant, but for a certain period of time. So in order to put in a part-time chief, you actually have to eliminate the full-time chief position for civil service purposes. Then, like I said, in a period of time, if we want to come back and go back to the full-time chief, then you rewrite the whole the requirements of the testing for the full-time chief position. So just wanted to mention that.
Anybody else from the public? Just state your name for the record.
Yeah, Barry Burr, I'm not as experienced as Mr. Diffie. He's got 45 plus. I only have 43 plus. But, I was pretty vocal when it came up about appointing a part-time chief, because I feel as if we need a full-time person. I met with Mr. Berthelot earlier this week, got some information, told him I still think we need a full-time chief. I still feel that way. He and I had a quick discussion before the meeting started. He assured me his idea was to have y'all pass a resolution to make this 12 months, and we would go and advertise in the meantime for a full-time fire chief. I think Mr. Crockett is more than eligible to do the part-time position, and I would support him. And I understand that you've got to go ahead and vacate the requirements so you can go ahead and expand your pool of applicants, which is good. So I'd just like to say that I am in favor and not opposed to this temporary situation. I think Mr. Crockett do a fine job.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? State your name for the record.
My name again. Gary Spillman. I'm gonna say that a lot of things that are said here tonight, some of it's not all the truth. I think the appointing authority has a lot more power than what is being given to him or is being said. I don't think that you should go to the Civil Service Board and ask to abolish the fire chief's position. I think that is going to be a mistake in the future. If you do that, I do believe that you need to make sure that when you abolish, if you do agree to do this, just make sure that you are taking that responsibility as the fire board, that you feel like that that's the best thing for the citizens of this parish. And we went through a lot of work setting this department up. Mr. Bertholite and all of us, Mr. Butch Browning happened to sit with myself, Jason Manola. Us three sat down and gave recommendations to the parish president on appointing the fire chief. And that took place from the beginning. Yeah, a lot of things have not been done. And I felt like that, you know, you guys as a fire board has no really authority or to oversee things to where, you know, yes, standard operating procedures and guidelines have been brought up for years now, but nothing has been done. So, you know, I think that, you know, if you would advertise this thing correctly and send it out to all your departments, your Baton Rouge department, your Baker department, your Zachary department, your Plaquemine, your New Roads, all the surrounding areas, you'll get more people to put in for it. You'll get people to put in for it that have qualifications. Tim Crockett has qualifications. He went to a lot of classes on his off time, you know. But you'll get qualifications. They do it all over the state of Louisiana. And you have paid and volunteer departments together that do this. And they have fire chiefs. You got Livonia. You got all these areas. Check around. I just think that if you just make sure of what you're voting on, because if you're, I just don't want it to be said later on that, well, I didn't know that's what I voted on. So parish president can basically let you know that when you vote for this resolution, what it actually means is being done. If it's mean abolishing that fire chief's position, then you understand that that don't have to ever come back. You can have part-time for the rest of the time here, and that might work. I'm not saying it won't. I'm not saying it will. But just make sure that the citizens are getting what they deserve. That's all I ask you to do.
Thank you. Administration?
I got some.
State your name for the record.
I'm James Hartley. I'm the civil service rep for the department, but I'm not representing the department when I say what I'm about to say. I'm speaking on my behalf. I read the chief qualifications plan, and like they say, we're a combination fire department, where our chief qualifications plan was written in a way that, in my opinion, more suits a full-time career guys, because while Tim Crockett does have all the requirements and everything, he does not meet our new qualification plan that was passed by the last civil service board. So with that being said, I'm not calling anybody out or anything, but to go and hire a full-time chief right now with the qualifications we have, I don't think works, because it limits the pool, and then we're not getting a true combination fire chief like we need. So the 12-month cap, in my opinion, works, or it may take longer, because what has to happen, in my opinion, is the chief qualification plan needs to be taken down. Abolish the position, take the plan down. Rewrite the qualification plan, and not just for fire chief, for firefighter, operator, all the way up through the ranks. And then re-put that plan in. In the meantime, get our SOPs, SOGs, and all of those things in line, and then bring the new chief back in. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yep. How far was this job posted out? Parish, state?
Yes, Deanna, she worked with the,
I'm Deanna Faru. I'm the Civil Service Board Secretary. The Office of State Examiner requires that we post for fire chief, firefighter on their state website, and that is the state website.
Okay.
So The fire chief posting was statewide.
Okay.
We did receive applicants from Plaquemine, from Zachary, and we actually, when we retested, I had 5 applications. 3 were the exact same applications, and we had 2 others that did not meet the qualifications. To go off of what Mr. Hartley says, our fire chief qualifications were changed in 2017. And when they were changed, the requirements were a little bit more stringent. They put in some certifications, Officer 1 and Officer 2, that actually the state examiner's office stood up and asked us not to do that. And they told us at that time that we would be limiting our hiring pool substantially. And that came to fruition. This is kind of what we're dealing with.
So we're required to have a 1 or 2 officer, right? For this?
Currently, yes, we
Okay.
are. What this does, if you guys vote in favor of dropping this down to part-time, what it does is it allows the Civil Service Board time to rewrite the qualifications for West Baton Rouge. For a fire chief, that would benefit West Baton Rouge, more of a combination chief. So we can have a part-time volunteer actually apply with 30-something years of service.
Okay.
So,
I got a couple questions. The budget of the fire department is what, about 3 million?
3.4.
3.4? 6 stations, 6 departments,
6 districts.
6
Sub-districts.
districts?
Yeah, yeah.
How many
We-
people do we have working during the day that the fire chief would be in charge of?
Well, currently, we have 20 full-time employees, but, I mean, it varies on day to day. We have 3 shifts, and we have about 5 people per shift when we're at full staff.
Okay.
So, but the fire chief is also in charge of contract employees and volunteers, so he's got a pretty big job.
From what I've heard with Mr. Crockett, he sounds very motivated. I think he would do a good job. The only problem that I have with it is 35 hours. I don't see how we're gonna rewrite standard operating procedures, be able to monitor the fire department, get the volunteers back on track at a 35-hour-a-week job. I just don't.
You're really kind of arguing 5 hours, though, because Kenny Hunts.
I don't think it should be 40.
Well, and it's not, because, I mean, most of us can say we work over our hours.
So would it be overtime involved in this?
That's administration. Can't go over
Okay.
35.
And if I can answer.
Yes, sir.
I think we got a lot of good people. Mr. Bean got up, we got a lot of good, I think we hadn't tapped into the people we have. Why should I not ask who would like to start stepping out? Because I only hear we don't have. The same people need to step up and say, hey, chief, let me try. Then we can utilize the people we have to make the standard operating procedures, the guidelines. If we utilize that, will give us a certain amount of cohesiveness again. We got to come together. So I don't think, I can't do it all, but I think I got good people here that can if I give them the opportunity. Nobody's given them that opportunity. I want to.
Anybody? Just press your button, Mr. Jack.
I think one more thing too. I mean, I don't know really stepping on like laws or anything like that, but he already operates as a volunteer chief for Lobdell and does not get paid and runs all nights. Now, I don't know if him being a part-time employee, if he shows up, does that necessarily mean he has to get paid?
That's a correction. He does get a small salary.
Oh, yeah, well, it's stipend now,
Probably
but
got something.
but that's what I'm saying. So if he goes over 35 hours and comes in the middle of the night to a call in Lobdell, does he have to go on the,
Time off during the next day.
so it'd be comp time? So you still have a chief? Is it, what?
Okay. This one. Yeah, this one.
Just have a question
Press your
for,
button, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Crockett. Yeah. Did you take the exam?
No, sir.
You didn't take it?
Hold on. You gotta have a certain amount of qualifications. I did not meet.
Mr. Crockett wasn't eligible
Yes.
based off of our qualifications. With state examiner's office, but before you're allowed to even sit to take their exam, you have to meet a certain requirement, and those requirements he did not meet. Mainly because he never worked in a full-time capacity with the fire district.
But I worked.
Mr. Crowe.
Yeah.
I guess this would be for Pee Wee, Mr. Berglot. My question would be, if we agree to this for a one-year period of time, does it have to, or can we, the abolishment of the full-time job through civil service, do we come back at another meeting a year from now and say we want to go back to civil service? Is that how we would do that? Or, I mean, so we would have the power to do that a year from now versus just saying it lasts forever?
Yeah, yeah. No, we could set it and put it where we could discuss it in a year, if that's what y'all want to do, we can do it. I'm hoping by a year, y'all done fell so much in love with Tim Crockett that you're not gonna wanna go back.
Well, I think the ideal situation for him to be qualified to be a
Absolutely.
full-time chief.
Yeah.
I think everybody here wants a full-time chief, and let's work in that year period of time, let's work for him to be a full-time chief. Let's get the qualifications out there, whether it be through civil service or not. But now, if he's full-time, he has to be through civil service, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So then the fact that we're gonna do away with the full-time chief does, like Mr. Spillman said, does not have to be permanent. We can monitor that, and at the point we say, no, we want a full-time fire chief back through civil service, then that would be a discussion we would have. We put it on the agenda and go and,
I specifically asked the question, can we leave our qualifications up there? And if we decide to go back, to a full-time chief, we already have them done. And my answer was no, you have to take those down, because, you leaving, like Deanna said, you leaving a position vacant that needs to be filled, and we fill it with a part-time position. So it goes away.
and I
But-
understand that.
But it'll go back, but like James said, what we got, when it goes back, we can all sit down and we're gonna come up with something that's gonna work for everybody, and where we don't exclude anybody or group it, and kind of make it where we can hire, people, I've been successful in business, and even here at the parish, we hire people, and we hire people with character and passion, and people who love what they're doing. Somebody like Tim Crockett, and that means more than, to me, all that experience and all them qualifications and anything. If you got somebody willing to dedicate their time and they put their heart into it, I don't think, you can do any better than that, and so that's kind of what I tend to look more for, and I think Tim had.
You do a lot of hiring, and we've got to stand behind your decisions on that, because you're the man in that position to be in. I just want to make sure that once we do this, we can undo it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
If we do away with the full-time chief, and Mr. Crockett's the right man for the job, and when we decide that, we would like to see him be a full-time chief.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure we can get back to that, but by and not.
Absolutely. If you remember what Guy Cormier told you when he came address all of y'all, the power of five, you can do just about everything, so.
Yeah. Mr. Gordon?
Okay, I got a question. The last two fire chiefs that was hired came from within. Are there a program in the department that could train somebody to become a fire chief, or is there any kind of program?
Yes, they can volunteer to take these different courses, and some
Okay.
do, some don't. They got to take some initiative on their own, probably do some, but, we.
Because that was a big question that you were
Yeah.
talking about. You didn't have nobody, so maybe somebody from
We-
another 5 years, Tim might be stepping down. Do we have any training program for them?
Yeah.
Anybody can actually, if you start taking the actual requirements, LSU offers most of the classes here, and then now you got a lot of online schools that will help you get that certification, so you can do that.
Okay, well, you're offering it to them because you like to see, you giving them time off to go to LSU for the class, or
Yeah,
or is it in their program, or are they training, or what? So,
Ms. Deanna?
Our department is very heavy on training. We supply all of the training for all of our firefighters. We have 3 of them here that's in the recruit academy that West Baton Rouge is paying for. So yeah, it's in the program. If they want a class, they can go to LSU and the department pays for it.
okay, I mean, to move up to.
To move up.
To the fire chief, somebody, I mean, you
Yes.
got all these young guys and ladies in here. I'm just assuming they want to move
Yes.
up, and if they move up, they're gonna have a better fire department.
Right, and that's one of
So-
the reasons that we're interested in bringing the fire chief's position back as a full-time. It's not a promotional position, but it does allow our firefighters that are on the floor now to work towards that, so that they can eventually apply and
Okay.
become the fire chief.
We
of the
also want
department
to
they
start
work
a
in.
program with the volunteers to give some initiative, so they can start taking courses and get qualifications to run calls and get paid on shift. We've actually talked about that with the fire marshal's office, and that is legal, and we can do that. So that's going to be another initiative to bring the volunteers and say, hey, you want to step up, you want to go a little farther, you can take these certifications and step up on shift and get paid for it. And I think that's a good initiative for some of the volunteers.
Yeah, okay.
Press your button, Mr. Gordon, done? Mr. Denson.
I know Tim well. I want to answer just briefly as you can. The volunteers, how do you plan on promoting and getting volunteers in the system? I'd just love to know a quick
Well,
synopsis of your plan.
in my fire department, we started with about 22. I still have about 15 that's active. The thing with volunteers, the only thing you got to do is tell them, you do a good job. You got to offer them something. And I think we hadn't been doing that. So the program, one of the programs we just talked about, will give them the ability to say, hey, you want to get paid? You want to be compensated? That's something we can start looking for as a basis of hiring somebody from our community. I'm pro West Baton Rouge Parish, right? So if you're working here and you're a volunteer, if we give you some initiatives, that'll make you come and say, because everybody, when I go to schools, I went to schools, they had an open house, you know what they asked me? What I'm gonna get out of it. Now I can say, you can get paid. You can get paid if you come, take the certifications, pass them, work, and then what's better than that? So I'm filling two jobs. I'm filling job and I'm getting a volunteer, right? That's the way we're going to build a combination department here. I got a card today, left in the mail. I got a bulletin board sitting out in front of my old fire station. Y'all ever go to Lobdell? That's the old block building. But in the back, I got a new nice stuff. But you'll see,
It is
it
nice.
talks about volunteerism, helping the parish one by one. And I think I got 2 or 3 calls in the last couple of weeks just for volunteers. But you got to put yourself out there. You got to let them know what they can get. If we don't do that, we don't promote ourselves, what are we going to get, right? You're looking at it. I'm trying to promote it. I'm coming from the volunteer side of it. So when they tell me, what are volunteers? Look at me. I might not be ugly, but look at me. We can give you something. That answers your question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kershaw.
I think volunteerism is not what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So that's a sign of the times that we're in now. So maybe we have to look at it a little bit differently. I got to tell you personally, I was probably leaning more toward the full-time chief. But after listening to Mr. Diffie, who's been in the fire service for 45 years, and Mr. Brewer's been in there for 43, and listening to you, Mr. Crockett, I'm willing to give this thing a chance. I'm willing to see what this can do, but I do want to put the caveat on there with we will review it within 1 year. So with that, I'm going to make a motion that we adopt this resolution changing the fire chief from a full-time to a part-time with a review in 1 year. That's my motion.
I want to speak.
Mr. Klein Peter?
Since we had such little people that apply for this job, what was the pay? Is that public notice? Is that public information?
We did a survey for, statewide, and we tried to compare it to, parishes and towns and cities and fire districts that's similar to our size and stuff like that. And I think Kenny was making somewhere like around 76, but they get $6,000 a year supplemental pay, and so, and we try to get somebody in there, so we go a little bit higher, and some of our firemen that's out there working and all this overtime are making a lot more than that.
120,000 from what I heard.
Well,
So why would somebody want to go from making you 80
Well-
to 100 and something thousand to a 75,000? Why would they want to step up and take a loss of money?
Well, I'm not saying those guys will, but maybe some others aren't making that much. But, some of these people are some of our senior people who's been there a very long time, and we haven't had so much overtime because we're not, for whatever reason, getting enough contract workers to come in and work these shifts where we don't have to pay overtime, or whatever it is, we need to do a better job managing our people and our personnel to try to eliminate a lot of the overtime. And it's kind of a runaway budget right now, and this is part of our concern and try to bring this in, as well as, you know, reduce our ratings as we go along and bring those back in line. And there's some things that's real easy to fix on those ratings, and so that we leave a lot of points on the table, and a lot of it is just documentation. We could get the other 2-3 points that we may need to save a rating. And so,
I had one more from the audience that raised his hand to speak.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Lane. Just one more comment before y'all vote. Just to clarify a few things. Number one, talking about the volunteer, the junior volunteers. We had one in the 90s in the Port Allen Department, and it was successful, and some of the younger guys, and I say younger, they're in their 40s now, that were in the program actually stuck with us and became members when they became 18, which is our minimum age. So it does help out. If we can get that going, that's going to be a great thing. Some of the salaries, Mr. Clumpy, you were talking about, I know we've had problems retaining our career personnel, which it seems as if as soon as we get them hired, they leave. And so all these guys that are working and making money, they're all making step-up pay because they've got to step up due to civil service. I think that's gonna, if we can stabilize our career personnel, then we're gonna stabilize our runaway salary situation. And one last thing for point of clarification, and Mr. Diffie and I have talked in the back there, we just want to make sure the board knows that we are opposed to a permanent full-time, a permanent part-time chief, I'm sorry. We are for eventually a full-time chief, and we hope that y'all will commit to making this a 12-month period. Now, if Mr. Crockett meets the qualifications, passes the test, and does the interview, if he decides to apply, you know, that's the decision that y'all will make with the parish president at that particular time. So I just don't want it to be limited to one person. We're making him chief full-time already, no offense to him. But, you know, I just want to make sure that it's going to be open-ended to everybody once the qualifications are set and the job is advertised again, that y'all will be going for a full-time chief. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Barry.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Kershaw and seconded by Mr. Densto. I just want to say one thing, that I think he's exactly right. I don't think anybody up here is all for a permanent part-time position as fire chief in West Baton Rouge. I think that we are just looking for something to move forward right now, to get this thing rolling and get everybody together so that, you know, we can ultimately one day redo the qualifications, get everything back together, and then figure out who's gonna be the fire chief and where we could go from there. But in the time being right now, I think we need to do something to get the fire department going in the right direction. So, anybody else? That being said, got a motion and a second on the floor. It's a yes vote to pass the resolution. The machine is open to vote. Motion passes 8-1. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Got a motion by Mr. Kershaw to adjourn. Thank y'all. We'll do 5 minutes, say 6:25, we'll start our council meeting.